Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. David with the Brain and Body Foundation, and welcome to Your Health in Your Hands. As you know, I'm still in the U.S., and among the things that we've been doing since we came to the U.S. has been to connect with organizations, connect with physicians, especially Nigerian physicians, because of course they understand it, especially those who were raised and who have been trained. At least part of the training has been in Nigeria. It was in the process of my going around and traveling around that I came across our guest today, and I'm going to introduce her in a few minutes. Now, remember what we're doing with these lectures and these talks is to educate the average Nigerian person, the man on the street, so to speak, on the principles regarding health. So, and we will continue to look for people to work with and continue to provide. It is our commitment to you to give you the absolute best when it comes to health education so that you and your family can take better control of your health. Now, without much further ado, let me introduce our guest today. Her name is Dr. Susan Edionwe. She is a board-certified otolaryngologist, ENT surgeon, and board-certified lifestyle medicine physician based in Houston, Texas. She specializes in sinus disease and general head and neck disorders, as well as lifestyle wellness. She is currently in private practice in the Houston area and was recently voted top doctor in her specialty in the Houston area. Wow, it's fantastic. Doc, thank you. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be on the show.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about what you do. I know skull base, ENT, that's a lot of stuff. Just give us an idea of what you do on a daily basis and what your interests are.
So what I do as an ENT is mainly I'm a sinus specialist. So I work with people who are suffering from any kind of sinus issues, smell disorders, whether it is, you think you have allergies or you maybe even have something worse, such as a sinus tumor. That is where my jurisdiction is. The primary surgery that I perform is sinus surgery. I also do surgeries that involve removing tumors. I also do surgeries such as repairing CSF leaks. And what a CSF leak is your brain and your nose, they sit side by side. And if there's a communication through the brain into the nose, you'll get a leak of brain fluid. And that is
cerebrospinal fluid leak. Okay, got it.
Exactly. So if somebody has that, that is something that I repair. And then aside from my, sinus things, I still do general ENT. I remove thyroids, problematic thyroids. I treat thyroid disease. I treat all kinds of tonsil disorders, mouth disorders, reflux even. Our jurisdiction as ear, nose, and throats, anything from here above, safe to say we can manage it.
That is a lot. Wow. And this is probably going to take us into several other discussions, but that's fascinating. One of which, and I know it's not for this time, is autism. I'm pretty sure, because we see a lot of kids with autism in our foundation, and I'm pretty sure you probably have to do a lot with tonsillectomies, adenoectomies, and how about ear infections and all that good stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's in the ENT world. That's what we call bread and butter. That is something we all deal with every single day.
Got it. So how has your practice changed since COVID-19 hit?
I would say, just from there's multiple ways. One, from the standpoint of exposure, for ENTs ourselves, there was a lot of data coming out of Italy suggesting that ENTs were getting sick with COVID-19 because a lot of what we do actually creates aerosol into the air, that if somebody has COVID-19, somebody in that vicinity could get sick. So we saw our practice in general shrink, the things that we did, because we had to protect ourselves. So that's just from our standpoint. From the standpoint of patients and people that we see, like I said, as an ear, nose, and throat, our jurisdiction is here and above. We know COVID causes, a lot of nasal sinus symptoms, causes a lot of sense of smell issues. We also know that people get tested through the nose. So
Right.
in my practice in particular, I saw all kinds of things. I had people come to me who, had no other symptoms aside from, for some reason, I can't smell anything anymore. I had people come to me who were even worse. This is the worst sinus infection I've ever had in my life. The stuff coming out of my nose is black. What's going on? I had people come to me who didn't really have any significant symptoms, but they were just scared. So they wanted testing. So it really, while we're sort of on the outside of the hospitals where you really see the sick people, we're kind of the screeners. We determine if you have it, if you don't, what your next steps are. And so that's how, in terms of the kinds of people I saw, that's how my practice was affected.
That's interesting. So, and again, because COVID-19 it primarily enters the body through the nose and the mouth, right? So that's, you would probably be at the front lines of all the action going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially diagnostically.
Real quick, why is it that they have this? Why is it that a sense of smell and sense of taste are so commonly affected in COVID-19? Is there an easy answer to that?
Not any real data that says exactly why, but in my understanding of sinus disease, that's a common symptom regardless of whatever kind of viral disorder you may have that affects the sinuses. So as long as there is any kind of inflammation there, you're going to see those nerves be affected. So was I surprised to hear that sense of smell was affected with the COVID-19? Absolutely not. We see that with a lot of viruses.
Yeah, but with SARS-CoV-1, was that a common thing?
It was not, I don't recollect it being a well-known thing, but I would not say that it didn't happen with SARS either. I think that the difference between SARS and COVID-19 now is we're so hyper-focused on the symptoms that every single thing we're saying, oh, this is COVID, this is COVID. But if we really were to go back, we probably would find that sense of smell changes is something that is quite common with a lot of other viral disorders. And even with COVID, it's not 100%. I've seen many people who do not have any sense of smell changes. In fact, we know one of the problematic things with COVID is that you can be asymptomatic. You can have the positivity and yet not have a single symptom. So the sense of smell changes aren't 100%. And that's why I think we're hyper focused on it because we're so hyper aware of COVID and what it can do. But I really do think that you'd see it in any viral disorder.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Today's topic is about stress and how it affects the brain and body, right? And you are a lifestyle medicine physician. I didn't even know there was a board certification for that as well. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. And you are very passionate. I can see from your bio and other things that you're very passionate about educating people, especially, I know you've been on the radio for about 2 years in the Houston area. And of course, with the Nigerian physicians, with an advocacy group, which is not exactly AMPA, right? An advocacy group. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit. But we do want to make sure that we get into how stress affects the brain and body, especially during this COVID-19 period, and what we Nigerians, those of us living in Nigeria, need to know specifically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned lifestyle medicine. Yes, and it's something that is a relatively new field, but the wonderful thing is that the complex of medicine is understanding more and more that we have started to focus more on treating diseases with medications and not really getting to the heart of a disease. Looking at lifestyle, looking at how you can really be preventative. If you give people insight into why they even develop their high blood pressure or their heart disease, if you give that to them early, you will start to see behaviors change. And so that's where this complex of medicine is really going. And that's why the American Board of Medical Specialties has even allowed for lifestyle medicine to become something that we can certify in. Unfortunately, when I was training, the things that I've learned through lifestyle medicine weren't exactly emphasized when I was a medical student or even when I was a resident.
Right.
But I've
Me
seen,
neither.
right? So, but when we look at how medicine initially started with Hippocrates, do you know Hippocrates, he used to prescribe exercise, he used to prescribe diet changes. Those were key to how medicine used to really be looked at, as how do we look at the lifestyle and then change behavior in order to curb disease. So that was really why I even wanted to certify in lifestyle medicine. And then once I did, some of the pillars of lifestyle medicine include sleep, understanding sleep wellness, exercise, plant-based diet. And then another pillar that really has my attention, which is what we're talking about today, is stress. I have found in my own practice, as I am taking care of patients with sinus disease or their reflux symptoms, I found myself over and over realizing that I'm also combating the consequences of their stress. So I'll give an example. I have a patient who, she often sees me for her throat symptoms. One of the things that we as ear, nose, and throat physicians treat is something called silent reflux. And what that is you get hoarseness, you feel like something is stuck in your throat, you're constantly throat clearing. It can be very debilitating for some people. They don't want to talk, they don't want to eat. So she came to see me, and I quickly realized that she was a very anxious somebody, just hyper wired, just, everything was causing her to be anxious and tearful. So I initially tried to treat her just with what we normally do, which is reflux medication. We do a scope where we look at your vocal cords and make sure that there's no cancer or tumors. And then we treat you with reflux medication. She kept coming back and we were not making improvement. And finally I said, I'm not going to get you better until you handle your stress, because this is what I'm up against. And
Wait. Hang on a minute. How do you know she was going through stress?
Because
it was stress related.
I could tell from her behavior, and I started to probe. And that this is really on a physician to be very inquisitive and to be observant about what the patient is experiencing. So after seeing her a couple of times, I said, something is going on in her family life, in her social dynamic, and I'm starting to see that in her behavior. And so I probed and I said, what's going on? Are you under a lot of stress? And then, she became tearful. Yes, I'm going through so much. And after we talked, I said, this is what we've been missing. I'm not able to get your throat symptoms to go away until you control your stress. And that was the first time she heard that. She said, well, what does my stress have to do with my throat? And so I had to explain to her, stress is not just a feeling. It is a chemical process in our bodies. And that chemical process has been shown to be very detrimental, including to our gastrointestinal system. So in her case, her reflux was really being exacerbated by her uncontrolled stress. And so when I really kind of showed her, hey, you're thinking it's just emotions, but this is actually what's hurting your throat, she had to really take it seriously. And she did. And I use her as an example because I'm very proud of the fact that she got that information and she took it seriously. She went to seek a counselor. She really put a lot of effort into controlling her stress. And for the first time in maybe 6 months, after her doing that and incorporating the medication, her throat symptoms finally resolved. So now she always tells me every time I see her, sometimes if she falls off the wagon, she'll come back to me just for my support, but she already knows what she has to do. She'll tell me, Dr. Adionwe, I know my stress is out of control. And the minute it started to happen, my throat symptoms came back, my reflux is back. And I tell her all the time, you know what you need to do. You know what the number one thing is here. We got to control your stress again. She'll go back to her counselor, she'll get back on her medication. And every single time she controls her stress, her symptoms resolve.
That is fascinating. That's a real life application of these things. And everybody experiences stress, but the thing with the Nigerian people is that we don't. I mean, I could be wrong. Yeah, this is just coming from my own perspective. Is that first of all, we don't even think about going to a counselor or a psychiatrist if they're available. That is for stress. I mean, everybody deals with stress, right? I mean, especially if you're in Lagos, you're going to deal with a lot of stress, and you just live with it. So I know we're talking about this prior to the program. Let's take us through the quote unquote pathophysiology and break it down for us. The way a fifth grader, as they say, would understand it. How does a simple thing as having friction between myself and my spouse, how does that lead to things like hypertension and stroke and kidney failure and all those things?
So the first thing we need to understand is, why do we even have a stress response? Because it is created in our body for a reason. And that stress response was really meant to be a self-limited, a very periodic response to danger, or to a reason for us to have what we call a fight or flight response. So let's say you are somewhere and you perceive a threat to your life. Your body is going to start to release certain hormones, particularly two. One called adrenaline, one called cortisol. Cortisol is the primary one, but your body will release those hormones as a way to shut off certain systems that are not needed right now, and to increase other symptoms that you are going to need to run. So for example, when that cortisol and adrenaline get released, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up. You're going to need to get blood to your body. You're going to need to get your heart pumping in preparation to run. Certain things that downregulate or your body decreases is your GI system. You're not worried about digesting food when you're in danger. You're worried about running. So your body has this stress response on purpose. Now, the reason why we see this response become a problem is when you experience a stressor that you don't control, as opposed to that response being very limited, being very quick, just to help you escape danger or preserve your life. Now that trigger, such as a marital issue, for example, it keeps that stress response going on and on and on. And that's not what that response was designed to do. So if you and your spouse have been fighting for 6 months or more, and every day you wake up, you are angry, you're stressed, unfortunately, that response is still triggered every day. That cortisol, that primary hormone, is still going. And now what was meant as a very temporary response has become a chronic response. And that hormone is not supposed to be around that frequently. So because it's around, it's sending signals to your body. One of the things that cortisol does is it increases blood sugar. Now, when you're running away, okay, you need that blood sugar because your muscles are going to need that energy to run, to escape danger. But when you're just in your home, you're not running, but you're stressed because of your spouse, you don't need all that blood sugar in your body. That becomes a problem. So you see how that response becomes an issue when you have a constant trigger, such as, a spouse in the home that you're not getting along with.
Doesn't stress also diminish the activity of the immune system?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is another thing that we see. Now, when somebody has the, sort of temporary stress response, when it's appropriate, that system actually improves your immune system. So cortisol actually temporarily improves your immune system. But the problem becomes when that cortisol stays around long term, it actually then sends a reverse signal. The body says, okay, well, this cortisol is around frequently. Maybe we need to diminish the immune system. So we've seen, and some of this is very scientific, but we've seen when cortisol levels stay prolonged, certain parts of your immune system called suppressor cells, they start to flourish and they start to suppress the immune system. And that's when you see things like colds and people being susceptible to flus and viruses. There's a study that came out that showed that if you were to take healthy individuals and put them in a stressful environment and then introduce the cold virus to them, the common cold, those that were stressed, they're most likely going to get the common cold. Those that are not stressed, they're going to do fine. So we've seen well established that cortisol ultimately suppresses the immune system if it's not checked, and you're more prone to sickness. And so imagine if you're already stressed and then COVID-19 is around you, your immune
Right.
system is going to be susceptible even more so. Wound healing is tied to your immune system. So if your immune system is healthy, then your healing process is healthy. So again, you're
Yeah.
seeing the consequence of elevated cortisol. One of the things that I was going to say in regards to COVID-19, when we talk about that immune system, that is a pillar of treating COVID-19, or rather preventing COVID-19. A lot of my patients that have come in scared about COVID-19, a lot of the different things that I've told them to do, like taking certain vitamins and minerals, that's all designed to bolster up your immune system so that you
Fantastic.
can maximize your protection. So if you're in a stressful environment, such as in Lagos, Nigeria, that's going to be a problem. I will tell you, one of the most interesting things that I have, statistics that I've found, do you know in 2015, Nigeria was called the most stressful country in the world? So,
No.
yes, yes. When I was looking some things up, I found that. So now imagine being such a stressful country, because Nigerians, we have all the stressors that everyone else has: marital strife, work issues, personal issues between maybe family. We have all the typical stressors, but there's not, aside from just personal stressors, there's also environmental stressors. For example, using the
Absolutely.
United States, racism is actually considered a stressor. And there's been well documented studies that show Africans and African Americans in the US suffer from elevated levels of heart disease. And racism is considered an environmental stressor that plays into why Black people in America have worse heart disease and worse health than white people in America. Now let's go to Nigeria. When we look at the environmental stressors, there's so many in a country that sometimes light is still being seized. There's a lot of people
Sometimes.
there's a lot of people still looking for work. You know, when we look at the recent social unrest with protests and things that people are experiencing in Nigeria, those environmental issues, they are real stressors for the people. And as long as you remain in that environment, unfortunately, you can't escape that kind of stress that's built into your life, on top of what you're already experiencing just as being a human with a husband or kids or family.
I think we definitely need to have you come back on, and we'll build upon this process. But I do not want to end this without having you give us your last words for the people of Nigeria. Remember, you're talking to millions and millions and millions and millions of Nigerians. So let's hear it.
So my last word to Nigerians who are listening to today's broadcast is, right now, everything in medicine is moving towards prevention, meaning the patient, you as somebody listening to this broadcast, it is up to you to protect your health. It is up to you to stay informed and to stay educated. What we find, medicine is not going to get cheaper. You know, people like me, unfortunately, are still going to cost. Surgeries are going to become more expensive. People are not going to have more access. Even in the United States, we deal with the same thing where people don't have access. So rather than only waiting for access, why not do what you can do now? Taking your health in your hands, understanding what sorts of things can I work on to protect my health, to protect my life, to prevent some of these costly diseases, to prevent high blood pressure, heart disease, even prevent COVID. I will say, you know, we talked about if I was going to be going to church before we started, and I'm trying to protect my family. So for now, I'll be looking at church online, but I'm doing all the things that I need to do, following the recommendations to protect my health and to protect my family's health. And whether it be COVID or whether it be heart disease, there's always something you can do to protect yourself and take control of your life.
Absolutely. Couldn't have been better said. Thank you so much, Dr. Susan Edionwe, and we will look forward to having you on soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy for your patients and for us Nigerians as well. So God bless. Thank you again for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being on. My goodness. Okay, take care. Bye-bye then. And folks, we will see you next week. Join us every week for Your Health in Your Hands. Remember, these videos are archived. They are on the NTA website. They are also on our website, brainandbodyfoundation.org. And you can go and catch up on a lot of those videos. God bless. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye.